While my daughter-in-law was taking her final breaths in a hospital bed, my own son was laughing, drinking, and chasing other women. I stayed silent at first, but when I finally responded, it didn't just shock him, it shattered his soul forever. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's story is not easy to tell, but it carries a lesson that every parent, every spouse, and every human being needs to hear. I am a father. I raised my son with love, discipline, and values. Or at least I believed I did. He married a kind woman, gentle in speech, strong in patience, and loyal beyond measure. She loved him deeply even when he stopped deserving it. Life tested them early. Illness entered their home quietly, then stayed loudly. Doctors gave timelines we prayed against. Hospitals became routine. Pain became normal. Through all of this, she never complained. She only asked for one thing: for her husband to be present. But presence was the one thing he refused to give. While she lay in bed, growing weaker each day, my son grew distant, colder, and crueler. He said life was too heavy, that he needed distraction. Distraction turned into absence. Absence turned into betrayal. I knew pieces of the truth, but not all of it. Parents often choose denial because reality is too painful. I sat by my daughter-in-law's bedside more than he did. I held her hand when machines beeped through the night. I listened when she whispered fears she couldn't tell her husband. And every night, I asked myself one question: how did I raise a son capable of abandoning someone who was dying for him? That question would soon demand an answer. The night everything changed was quiet, almost cruelly peaceful. Rain tapped against the hospital window like a slow countdown. My daughter-in-law's breathing was shallow, each breath a struggle she no longer tried to hide. I called my son, once, twice, 3 times. No answer. I texted him that the doctors were concerned, that he should come immediately. Hours passed, nothing. Later, I discovered where he was. A restaurant. Music. Laughter. Another woman sitting too close. When he finally arrived at the hospital near dawn, his clothes smelled of perfume, not antiseptic. He looked tired, but not worried. He asked how she was, as if she were recovering from a minor fever. I watched nurses look away in quiet judgment. I watched his wife open her eyes briefly, searching the room until she found him. She tried to smile. That smile broke something inside me. She reached for his hand. He hesitated before taking it. That hesitation screamed louder than any argument. When she fell asleep again, he stepped outside to take a call. I followed him into the hallway. He laughed softly into the phone, turning his back toward her room. In that moment, my role as just a father ended. I wasn't only disappointed, I was ashamed. Ashamed of my blood, ashamed of my silence. I realized then that love without accountability becomes cruelty. And if I stayed quiet, I would be complicit. I went back into the room and sat beside her, knowing she might not see another sunrise. And I made a decision that would change my son forever. She died the next afternoon. Quietly. No drama, no final speech. Just one last breath, and then stillness. My son was in the cafeteria when it happened. He missed it. Again. When I told him, his face collapsed, but not in the way grief usually does. It was confusion mixed with inconvenience. He asked if the funeral could be delayed because of work. That was when I knew words alone would never reach him. At the funeral, people spoke of her kindness, her patience, her strength. They spoke of her loyalty. My son stood beside me, accepting condolences he hadn't earned. After the burial, I asked him to come home with me. He thought I wanted to comfort him. He was wrong. Inside my house, I handed him a box. Inside were letters. Pages and pages written in her handwriting. Letters she wrote when she couldn't sleep, when pain kept her awake, when loneliness hurt more than disease. She never planned to give them to him. She asked me to keep them safe. I told him to read them, all of them, alone. He started laughing nervously, saying now wasn't the time. I told him this was the only time. As he read, his posture changed. His breathing changed. His face lost color. He read about nights she waited for him, about excuses she defended him with, about loving him even while dying alone. When he finished, he looked at me with tears flooding his eyes. That was when I finally spoke, and I did not raise my voice. I didn't need to. I told my son that grief was not his punishment. Memory was. I told him he would wake up every day knowing he was loved completely by someone he abandoned willingly. I said he would never again hear her voice, never feel her hand, never earn her forgiveness. I reminded him that loyalty is tested when it costs something, not when it is convenient. He tried to speak, but I stopped him. I said apologies are useless when the person who deserved them is buried. I told him he didn't lose a wife. He threw her away. His knees gave out and he sat on the floor like a child. But I did not hold him. Some lessons must be learned without comfort. I told him that from that day forward, he would live with truth, not excuses. I said I would not lie for him, cover for him, or protect his image. I would tell the story exactly as it was if anyone asked. Not to shame him, but to honor her. He cried harder then, begging me to stop. But I continued. I told him love is not proven by words, gifts, or promises, but by presence when it is hardest to stay. I said his greatest failure was not infidelity, it was absence. When I finished, there was silence, heavy, permanent. He finally understood that my response wasn't anger, it was judgment, and it would follow him longer than grief ever could. Weeks passed. My son changed, but not in the way redemption stories usually go. He became quiet, withdrawn, almost haunted. He avoided mirrors. He avoided laughter. He avoided women. Guilt has a way of aging a person quickly. One night, he asked me if I thought she could ever forgive him, wherever she was. I told him forgiveness is not something you assume or demand. It is something you earn through actions, even if the person you hurt is no longer alive. He started visiting her grave regularly, not for show. Alone, no phone, no excuses. He began volunteering at the same hospital where she died, helping patients who had no visitors. I watched from a distance. I didn't praise him. I didn't discourage him. Growth doesn't need applause. It needs consistency. Still, some damage cannot be undone. Some regrets do not fade. He once told me the worst part wasn't losing her. It was realizing she loved him more than he ever loved himself. That realization broke him daily, and maybe that was necessary. Pain, when faced honestly, becomes a teacher. I learned something too. Love does not mean defending your children when they are wrong. Sometimes love means standing firm and letting truth hurt. Because lies comfort temporarily, truth transforms permanently. This story is not about punishment. It is about consequence, and about the cost of neglecting love when it is asking for nothing but your time. People often ask me if I regret being so harsh with my son. They assume a parent's role is to soften reality. I disagree. A parent's duty is to prepare a child for accountability. If I had comforted him with excuses, I would have failed both him and the woman he lost. Love without standards creates entitlement. I refuse to contribute to that. Over time, my son began to understand this himself. He told me that my words hurt more than her death initially, but lasted longer in a way that reshaped him. He said every choice now carries weight because he finally understands consequences. That understanding came too late for her, but not too late for the world he still lives in. This story is not meant to shame men, or women, or relationships. It is meant to warn. When someone stands beside you in your weakest moments, they are showing you their soul. When you abandon them, you reveal yours. Loyalty during comfort is easy. Loyalty during suffering is rare. If you are listening to this while neglecting someone who loves you, consider this your warning. Presence is not optional. It is the price of love. And if you are a parent, remember this. Silence in the face of your child's wrongdoing is not mercy. It is betrayal of truth. I chose truth. It cost me peace, but it gave my son something more valuable. Awareness, and awareness, once gained, can never be undone. Time continued forward as it always does, indifferent to regret. My son never remarried. Not because he couldn't, but because he wouldn't. He said comparison felt like another betrayal. He chose solitude over repetition of harm. Some might call that punishment. I call it reflection. He started speaking to young men about marriage, honesty, and responsibility. He never painted himself as a hero. He called himself a warning. That took courage. He told them love is fragile, not because it is weak, but because it requires daily effort. He explained that betrayal doesn't always look like another person. Sometimes it looks like absence, distraction, and excuses. Watching him speak, I saw pieces of the man he could have been sooner. That knowledge hurt, but it also healed. As for me, I visit her grave too. I apologize for not speaking sooner, for trusting that my son knew right from wrong simply because I taught him once. Values must be reinforced, even in adulthood. Silence can be as destructive as cruelty. This story lives with me so that it can save others. If it makes one person choose loyalty over temptation, presence over pleasure, then her death carries meaning beyond pain. Stories do not change the past, but they can protect the future. And that is why I am telling you this today. Not for sympathy, not for validation, but for awareness. Because love ignored is love lost, and sometimes lost forever. There is a dangerous belief that people will always be there, that there will be time later, that apologies can fix anything. This belief destroys relationships quietly. My son believed it. He thought tomorrow was guaranteed. He thought she would always be waiting. Illness shattered that illusion, but not before damage was done. When love asks for presence and receives neglect, it does not scream, it fades. By the time loss arrives, it is too late to repair what was ignored. This is not a story about villains and heroes, it is about human failure. My son was not evil, he was careless. And carelessness, when combined with opportunity, becomes cruelty. If you are watching this and feel uncomfortable, good. Discomfort is the beginning of self-examination. Ask yourself who you are taking for granted. Who is quietly enduring while you delay responsibility? Love does not need perfection. It needs effort daily, consistent, honest. My response shattered my son because it removed all hiding places. No excuses, no denial, only truth. And truth is heavy when you are not prepared to carry it. But it is also cleansing. If you are a parent, speak when your children are wrong. If you are a partner, show up when it is hardest. If you are human, remember this. One day memory will replace presence. Make sure your memories do not become your punishment. Some stories stay with people because they reflect truths we try to avoid. This is one of them. It forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about loyalty, responsibility, and timing. My son lives with those questions now permanently. He does not ask for pity. He accepts his past fully. That acceptance is his sentence and his salvation. I no longer try to protect him from judgment. He does that himself with honesty. And in doing so, he honors the woman he failed. That may be the closest thing to redemption he will ever know. If you think this story is extreme, remember this. Betrayal rarely begins with intention. It begins with neglect. It begins with choosing self over commitment, comfort over duty. By the time intention appears, the damage is already done. The response I gave my son was not planned. It came from truth demanded by circumstance. I did not scream. I did not curse. I simply refused to lie. Sometimes the most powerful response is clarity. If this story hurts, let it hurt. Pain that teaches is a gift. Pain that is ignored becomes repetition. You cannot undo yesterday, but you can protect tomorrow. Let this be a mirror, not a verdict. Because the difference between regret and wisdom is when you choose to change. And change must happen before loss, not after. That is the lesson she left behind. If you have stayed with this story until now, it means something inside you recognizes its truth. Stories like this are not entertainment. They are warnings wrapped in experience. If you are in a relationship, be present. If someone is suffering beside you, do not abandon them for comfort elsewhere. And if you are a parent, remember this. Love does not mean silence. Love means guidance even when it hurts. My response shattered my son, but it also saved him from becoming worse. That does not bring her back. Nothing ever will. But it prevents another story like this from being written in the same way. If this story made you think, share it. Someone you know might need to hear it before it is too late. If it made you uncomfortable, reflect on why. Growth begins where comfort ends, and if it reminded you of someone you have neglected, reach out now. Not tomorrow. Not later now. Because time is the one thing love never promises. Thank you for listening. If you believe stories like this matter, support the channel by liking the video, subscribing, and sharing it with others. Your support helps us tell stories that don't just entertain, but awaken conscience. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk honestly about accountability, love, and responsibility. Until next time, choose presence over excuses, truth over comfort, and love over selfishness.